Whew, something stinks. Are you ready to discover 10 indie games that were destroyed by both critics and fans? Well, thankfully, most of the games we get to play here at the channel are, at worst, good. Every now and then you do get a stinker that slips through the cracks, but being stuck with a review of a terrible game, there's just not much you can do about it except grin and bear it. But hey, this has happened to all of us at one point or another. Reviewers are not. A bad game that we thought would be great stumbles into our library or into our lives or wherever. Maybe we thought the critics were wrong and they weren't, or maybe you just got really unlucky. Either way, this list will feature games that I think we can almost all certainly agree are less than pleasant. But real quick, I'll tell you what doesn't stink heading over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where you can gain Discord access to the greatest indie gaming community, enjoy early ad-free shows, receive a shout-out at the end of every video we produce, our podcast 3 days early, and so much more. Or grab a YouTube membership and win the elusive golden genie lamp of approval next to your name. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Okay, I haven't played every game at this list, but I did watch Barely Magic Mike play number 10, a first-person horror game that on the surface looked like it could have been a cool little tribute to the Condemned series, but sadly, this one left Mike feeling rather cold in the end. That's right, we ran a full review of Pneumata, a critically flawed and somewhat broken experience that features lackluster combat, terrible controls and inventory management, bland environments, and laugh-out-loud voice acting performances that sound like they were recorded in a public restroom. Pneumata was loaded with glitches and other issues, enemies are bullet sponges, and more often than not, you'll have no idea which direction you should even be heading in. Even if you're a hardcore fan of survival horror games, do yourself a favor and avoid Pneumata at all costs, as sadly it's about as much fun as being trapped in a room full of farts. Oh, I can still smell it. We greatly hope the developer was able to learn from this experience and gets another crack at making a game in the not-too-distant future. What was supposed to be an epic, gothic, first-person adventure game that kinda mixed elements of, Altered Beast in there with transformation mechanics, ended up a total disaster, sitting at mostly negative reviews. Next on our list is Guise of the Wolf. It's clunky, it's broken, confused, and barely works in any capacity. But you probably already knew that was the case if it's on a list like this. Featuring a truly dreadful combat system, Guise of the Wolf just can't seem to get out of its own way. What's worse than bad combat, though? Terrible stealth. Oh no. Throw in some truly dreadful navigation, a transformation system that barely has an impact on the gameplay, and a hilariously bad visual and audio presentation complete with terrible voice acting performances, and you've got yourself one of the worst indie games of all time. Seriously, the glitches were so bad in this one that it quite literally scared some players. Avoid it or get it for a laugh, whichever you prefer. Psst. Oh, there you go. I just marked the territory for you. Now go pee somewhere else, somewhere far away from Guise of the Wolf. Huh? What's happened here? A game so truly terrible that rumor has it, Valve pulled the game for being such a low effort and basically a non-functional product. GASP in horror at GASP, a game that was supposed to be all about survival exploration, but is really about nothing at all. I'm not making that up. There were no objectives for players to follow, nothing to interact with, no actual gameplay outside of aimlessly wandering empty environments. Sheesh, and you thought the early days of No Man's Sky were terrible. Much like the rest of GASP, controls made no earthly sense, and the visuals and sound design, well, about equal to someone's weekend side project where they just dick around with a game here or there. Not even close to complete. How this game got on Steam in the first place, well, that's up for debate. The world may never know, but I've heard rumors that this one was indeed a scam of some kind, and that perhaps the developer is still out there under a new name. I can't verify any of that, obviously, but alas, GASP isn't just a terrible game, it may not even have been a game at all in the first place. Onto what appears to be one of the worst reviewed racing games in the history of Steam. I've never played it myself, but those that unfortunately did sure have a lot to say about it. FlatOut 3, a game that has seemingly only become even less popular over time. Yeah, I don't see a redemption story in the future. Players cite terrible AI, awful physics, and some of the worst collision detection imaginable. The game has somehow mustered over 3,000 negative reviews. It really brought the haters out. Crashes look hilariously bad. There's an endless slew of bugs and glitches and everything else in between. Someone should serve this game a damn DUI, or better yet, it should have never been allowed on the road in the first place. Just terrible. It would have never got its driver's license. I kinda went down a rabbit hole with this next release. I don't really remember it coming out, but strange story here. It wasn't a bad game necessarily, however, it was abandoned by the developer. That game was Towns, which existed in a time before we had Steam Early Access as we do now. Meant to be inspired by the game Dwarf Fortress, it was an ambitious city builder in that it added RPG-style dungeon crawling into the mix. Sadly, core important features were ultimately missing. The UI was in a bad way, and it was just obvious that the game had no business being released. In today's world of early access, sure, maybe, but back then, not so much. But where things really got ugly is when the developer handed off the project, only for it to die a few months later due to poor sales and the new developer's inability to keep up with the costs. A sad story really, as out of the gate, Towns was able to sell 200,000 copies. Have you heard anything about this game since? I did a little bit more digging, and it does look like the dev hops onto the Steam forums from time to time and reads some of those comments for what it's worth. Alright, number 5, what was supposed to be a mix of Mass Effect and Heavy Rain. Interesting combination there. Well, it ended up anything but. It's Revolution 60, a dull, shallow experience full of tedious QuickTime events, no real challenge whatsoever, and clunky controls. I haven't even touched on the decision-making system, but I'm trying to be at least somewhat respectful here, as best as I can be. As you can see from this footage, the visuals are just laughably bad, only outshined by some truly heinous dialogue. What's crazier is that rumor has it a great deal of money was actually poured into this project, so you have to wonder, where did it all go? Even stranger, these characters barely look like humans. Are they human? Outside of that, Revolution 60 is just very bad. A total disaster. Our next game at least stands at a mixed on Steam. I should mention this list is in no particular order, by the way. So yeah, this one's not a total shit show, but also it is pretty bad all the same. And who knows, could be some developer and developer friend reviews out there getting that review up to a mixed. It happens more than you would think. Meant to be a horror experience in a spooky amusement park, the park is instead a dull, slow trudge, light on scares, and without all that much to do. It only takes a bit over an hour to get through the game, but even then, it kind of feels like a waste of time. There's no meaningful puzzles, it isn't scary, the narrative is flat, and the visuals are middling at best. Toss on some pretty poor voice performances and cheap jump scares, and you have a game well worth avoiding. This is a bummer because I genuinely love circus horror, and wanted the park to be so much more than it actually is. Now we have a noir action game set in an open world of sorts? What could possibly go wrong on a shoestring budget? Apparently plenty, as Dark Years is number 3 on our list. Now I'm no graphics snob, but visually, I mean, come on, Dark Years looks dreadful even though it did release in 2015. It was bad for that time. That said, poor graphics can certainly be overlooked if a game is fun, happens all the time, but that's sadly not the case here. Invisible walls, stiff animations, bad programming, and an awful camera ensure there is no fun to be had. The driving? Horrendous. Combat? Don't even ask. Oh yeah, and you can brute force just about every puzzle in the game, though they are so frustrating you probably won't even bother doing it. Sprinkle in some very poor localization and dialogue, and what could have been a pretty cool setting is completely squandered. The only real positive thing that can be said for Dark Years is that it will boot up, maybe. You might get lucky. What a strange release. I can't say I knew much about this one, but now I kind of do. Remembered as one of the stupidest games to ever grace Steam, Time Ramesside? A New Reckoning is our next lowlight. Designed as an indie FPS of sorts, the game was slammed for its pre-bought assets, dreadful combat, and goofy story that wasn't even worth a laugh. While the developers made, efforts to fix things, this is a rare case where each new patch only dug them a deeper grave. Cutscenes featured stock flat JPEGs, I'm not making that up. There were grammatical errors littered throughout, and actually completing the game, I'm not even sure if it's possible based on some of the user reviews that I've read. It does still remain on Steam. If you ever have a real morbid curiosity, go ahead and check it out. We've got links for all of these stinkers below. Well, except for the ones that were pulled or delisted or don't exist anymore. Alright, I can't take much more. I'm gonna leave you with Renzo Racer. I know it's at number 1, but it's actually not the worst game on here. It's a pretty bad one though. A cartoonish animal-themed racer that had ambition. Hell, there was even VR support, but sadly things didn't quite come together. The handling really murders this game, making it feel ever so sluggish. Items or power-ups were completely unbalanced, and it doesn't help just how generic the whole thing looks. No real backstory for characters, nothing memorable about it whatsoever. And that kinda sucks, because we can always use a fun new kart racer in the world. I really feel like the indie scene has a few good ones, but it could use even more. The game has made some progress since release, but still not really enough here that makes it worth your time, in my opinion anyways, so better options available. We do in fact have a list of indie kart racers somewhere on this channel that I actually prefer to some of the later Mario Kart games, so be sure to check that out. I'll try to throw a link down there for that below, but that's gonna do it for this list, folks. As always, thank you so much for supporting independent content. I promise the next video won't be so negative or stinky. I gotta spray something in here. Whew.